yes, absolutely, things have changed, and I'm sure you'll go a long way to find a patient that doesn't agree with that in terms of general practice. I think one of the key things for me really is the speed at which things changed almost overnight when the pandemic hit in March 20. But the things that we've been left with really, for me, are more of a symptom of the whole picture of general practice rather than COVID pandemic. So if I just give you, the background to why I think that, because when the pandemic hit in March 20, we'd already started looking at remote ways to consult with our patients, ways that we could speed up consultations, ways that we could do more work in less time, if you like, because we knew that our workforce crisis was getting worse, progressively worse, and demand was increasing. So we'd already just started trying to look at online consultation models, texting patients, etc. And all of that was running in the background where I was working, but in London, I know it was working. It was already well underway. And then obviously the pandemic hit, and almost overnight, everyone adopted all these things that we've been trying to sort of get going on a rather much slower pace. And they've stayed with us. And I think they will stay with us because, unfortunately, it wasn't just about the pandemic anymore. It's about the fact that there's so much demand and not enough of us, and we're having to do twice as many things in less time. So I can ring twice as many patients as I can see face to face, and that's the reality of it.
I think it's a healthy combination of madness and passion. I definitely am enjoying it. I think I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed it right away. The last couple of years of my training were quite substantially disrupted. From about halfway through my fourth year, everything went online. We went to work as HCAs in intensive care units across London. Sort of our formal training sort of stopped for quite a period of time until we did our final year, which again was quite different, a lot of online. So when we finally started working, it was very much out of the frying pan into the fire sort of picture. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot on the job. That's the sort of thing. And once you start doing it, I think there's a sort of gratification that comes from putting into practice this stuff you've been working on for years and years and years. And actually, once you get through your first job, because you do sort of 4-month rotations for the first 2 years, you start to feel, okay, maybe I should turn around when people say, "Doctor, can you help me?" Because for the first bit, you sort of hope someone else will answer.
It isn't the job that we train for. None of us thought, I certainly didn't think I'd be texting patients, I'd be, reviewing photographs from patients, but unfortunately, it is where we are, and we just have to make the best of it. And I do still see patients face to face. I know there's been a lot of bad press around GPs not seeing anyone face to face. We see a lot of patients. We probably see about 40% of our patients that we deal with on a day-to-day basis face to face. The reality is that many of the patients we perhaps saw face to face before we didn't absolutely need to. I know patients like it. I know they want to see us face to face for a lot of things. But we also have lots of patients who actually quite like the fact that they can ring up in their lunch break at work and get sorted without having to take time off work to come in, etc. So what I don't like about it is I think we're just adding to that fast-paced life of society where everything is non-contact and non-personable, and that is sad, because this job was always a personable job, and most people go into it because they like people and they like dealing with people, and that is a sad fact, really.
Regularly work 13-hour shifts, so like you're scheduled in 9 to 5, but if someone's sick at 5, you're hardly just going to say, all right, I'll see you tomorrow, hope you're still there. You stay, you sort it out. You can't just hand over a mess to the night team. And so often, you are the person that's there to fix the mess because you're there for 13 hours that day and the next day and the day after that as well. So the hours are long, and there's no lying about that. There's no two ways about that. But we don't have the staff to make it any less.
I think it is quite demoralising at times for primary care. Look, there's a lot of situations out there where patients will tell us they haven't got access to primary care, and I absolutely, I don't dispute that one bit, and I know that that's a real problem for patients, and I really do feel for patients. I've got family too, and I'm a person at the end of the day, and I know that in my own family I've struggled at points to get what they need. So But general practice is seeing over 1 million more contacts a week than pre-pandemic. You know, we are infinitely busier than we were before the pandemic because of all these effects on the hospital, the increased waiting list times, the when outpatient stops because of the latest variant, when surgical procedures aren't going ahead, all of those things, patients can't get into the hospital, and I understand why. I'm not blaming, I'm not issuing blame here. I totally understand why. But where do they go? They come to primary care for help and support, and so that all of the things that happen in the hospital, they do have a knock-on effect on primary care, and demand is infinitely up, and the number of GPs is rapidly going down. People are leaving, people are retiring early, and it all has it's a perfect storm, really. I think most people would be lying if they said they'd gone through a pandemic and hadn't had moments where they thought that, but the majority of us still have that inbuilt belief that things will get better, and because we want it to get better and we're willing it to get better. So yes, absolutely, there's been bad days where you just think, what am I doing, what is the point of this? But those bad days, it doesn't take long before a patient encounter or something happens that just reminds you exactly why you're here. And I had one of those a couple of weeks ago in a vaccine site that I was working in. I was having one of those weeks where you think, what am I doing here? And it just took one patient who spotted me in the vaccine site, and all she did was wave at me. And I waved, and I hadn't seen her for a couple of years. And she went up, she had her vaccine and she left. And she came back about 4 hours later and asked for me. And she'd written me a letter. And she said, don't read it until I've gone. And she went, and she'd written me a letter and said, you just reminded me when I saw you that when I was really, really struggling, you helped me. And, I wanted to thank you. And she wrote all these things about the ways that I'd helped her. And things like that keep you going. Those are the reasons that we're here, and those are the things that will keep us coming back. But it's tough. It's tough for every part of the system right now.
We all know the NHS is underfunded and overstretched, and for too long now runs more off the altruism of those that work within it than the funds that are attributed to it. But it's like things like Helen's saying, it's the people you work with. There's a real sense, and I do think that's one thing that the pandemic has bolstered perhaps, is the camaraderie of people that are in it. Is you're all in it together. There is a sort of sense of, look, we're all sort of, for sounds a bit cheesy, but fighting the same fight or working towards the same goal that is for our patients. And it is, you do have days where you're like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? This is madness. And then, it's like I say, maybe you have a patient or who cheers you up and helps you more than you help them that day. Or maybe you have like a staff member that comes with a cup of tea and says, just take 5 minutes. Something like, people look out for each other. And I think that's doesn't happen in every industry, and I think it's a special part of healthcare that is worth protecting.
Like most things in life, initially, of course, when the pandemic hit in March 20 and we changed all our practice and we went to remote working and so on, they were on the whole very supportive. We've got a great base of patients here. I'm very lucky to have a great set of patients, and they were really supportive. They sent chocolates and biscuits and pictures and colourings from the children and all sorts, and that was great. That really lifted our spirits at a time of great uncertainty as the whole country were feeling. And then, of course, things started to open up a bit, and that's when we really sort of felt under a degree of scrutiny and criticism, and support waned. People were fed up, people were frustrated, and on the whole, it's our reception staff that take the brunt of that, because that's the first person that they come across. So it's gone in waves like that. Each time there's been a new lockdown, things have been in the media, it's serious. Things have eased off again, and then when things start to open up again, our levels of abuse go up. Things were particularly bad in October, November, because I don't think we can underestimate the power of the media, really, and what they portray. And if they're portraying GPs as being lazy and not seeing anyone and being closed, we've been open right through, as I know many colleagues have. We've never once locked the door. We've never said we wouldn't see a patient face to face. We've been selective in who we bring in, but more so towards the latter part, as I've said, because of our need to ration resources rather than the pandemic. And patients got very frustrated at that. And it was really quite hard in October, November time when there seemed to be this mass outpouring of abuse for primary care, because patients really sort of fed off that, and it was palpable, the difference in attitudes. We had a lot of staff really upset every day, and it seems to have settled down again now, but hopefully we won't go back to that point, because it's just not productive for anyone when those kind of things are being chatted about.
And no children yet, but this is something I think about quite a lot. I think it's sort of ridiculous that we ask people at 18 to have a realistic expectation of a career as a doctor. Maybe, you know, reading things like Adam's books probably quite a helpful way to get some insight. I think yes, I would still encourage, if people have the desire, we need people that want to do it. And I do think starting early, people thinking about what they want to do is still, I mean, okay, I'm 6 months in, I'm probably still fairly jaded, but I'll take it. It's still a brilliant career, and it's enjoyable. Once you get into it, you start to feel like, oh, this was worth it. I'm enjoying myself, and anyone that wants to do it should definitely still consider doing it. Don't be put off. All jobs are hard. There's no easy jobs.
I've got 3 children, and I don't think, certainly the early indications are that none of them want to do medicine. I think they've seen me do too many long days and, you know, get home too late, etc. But yeah, I think, you know, if somebody's really passionate and wants to do it for the right reasons, and that's what it is, to do it for the right reasons. I think a lot of people go into it because they think it's a good job, and that's not a good reason.
Yeah.
Do it want to, not because you think you should or because you think it's a good job, because there's lots of good jobs out there that aren't perhaps as as challenging at points.